good frame of mind this evening. That's marvelous. You know, keep in mind those that are unfortunate ones that don't feel as well and are not here, so we'll keep them in mind. I think Sister Carrie had to go with the ER this evening. She's got some stomach problems, and so keep in mind her and Jody still recuperating. And Sister Peggy's friend that she had been noting is Betty Osmond, who had the brain tumor, did pass away today. So remember that family. And then some of the neighbors of the Roberts, Kim Hood, keep that family in mind. Dion's brother Danny, and others that might need to be noted. Of course, Brother Bob and Sister Hilda's back with us again this evening. They're going to sit down and compare notes about falling and what it's like to be horizontal. Yeah, how to get up properly. We can joke about it now as we're all old. We're back about yeah. So anyway, we're glad that they're doing as best as they can, and remember others, those that are shut-ins as well. Keep in mind Lyndall and Virginia and Lana and Sister Jimmy and Linda Posey, who's taking care of her. So there's a number of different ones we continue to note in that respect. So do keep them in mind in your prayers. We're in Judges chapter 9. Before we get started in our text, we'll have a short word of prayer. So if you would bow with us, and we'll begin. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy great and matchless name. We give thee thanks, O Father, for the day we've had, the blessings that we enjoyed today and throughout our life. And thou hast blessed us mightily and above our measure and deserving. And we pray, O Father, that we might use those things that have come to us to bring honor and glory to thee, and always be mindful from which they come. We're grateful for the opportunity with life that has presented to us now to come together and assemble to study from thy word. We're grateful for the word. We pray, Father, that it might be the source of our guidance every moment. And so that when in fact that we are ready to depart from this life, that we, having followed that will, are prepared. Help us now in our study to open our minds to it, and that as thy word will register upon our hearts, that we might be able to gain things that help us in our service to thee. And forgive us when we fail thee. Remember those that are of our number that are sick ones. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. As we return to Judges chapter 9, we remember primarily the characters that are involved in this particular narrative. And who is it primarily involving? Abimelech, who, in fact, as you might remember, as we pointed out, has been listed among the judges. But as we also know from our study, that he was not a judge appointed by God. The fact of the matter is, he really wasn't a judge of any sort. He had brought himself as a result of the influence of his mother and the people of Shechem, from which she came, to arise to a position of power and basically asserts himself as king, and they appoint him as such. Now, you have to wonder, when you take this into consideration, how much in and around the spans of the nation of Israel would have known about what it was that was going on. Some, I would imagine, a good portion of them would have had to have known about the situation regarding Gideon, because he was God's appointed judge. And of course, again, you might remember that, get it back here, that this line right here is basically giving you an idea of where the valley of Jezreel was, and Ophrah was in this area, and this is where Gideon was from. And this is the area of Shechem right in here. And that being the case, and I may have that showing, no, I had that mentioned wrong, excuse me. This is the area of the valley of Jezreel where it empties out. Ophrah is going to be in this area. Shechem is right in here. I do want you to keep in mind where Shechem is in reference to the entirety of the nation of Israel, because it's going to play a little bit of a role in some things we're going to be talking about during the course of the rest of the chapter. But what I was getting at is you have to wonder as to how, with the information and the capacity that they may have had during that time to share information, how much the rest of the nation would have known about the situation regarding Abimelech. And now that he's asserted himself as king, what their opinions are about that situation. And of course, we don't know much about it because nothing's ever stated about that really in detail. But it does make you somewhat wonder about what the situation is with the people as they consider this. Now, with the things that had taken place, and let's just bring our minds back to the point where after Gideon's death, he had 70 sons, Abimelech being one of them, as you might remember. He sets himself up to come into this position of leadership. And one of the ways he's going to do this is through the influence again of his mother and the men of Shechem from where she had come from. And with that area being now the focus of the emphasis of the positions of leadership, which some of the others, they come from different areas, but most of them in and around the center portion of the nation. Now that he has come into this circumstance, and as you remember the verse before we closed last week, in verse 22, actually we got through verse 23, but it's important to go back and notice what's stated again in verse 22, because it mentions here he reigned 3 years. And what that does is just kind of gives you a capsule of the circumstances regarding Abimelech, but everything else concerning his life, if it pertains to what God wants us to remember about him, is then going to begin with what we find in verse 23 and following. And you might remember what we studied last week is after he has come into this situation, then what God does is he's going to send an evil spirit that's going to exist between him and the people of Shechem. Now, having gone through that and having discussed this a little bit, you might posit your idea a bit about what you think that how God would have achieved that spirit of enmity that exists here. Okay, you're going to have obviously a bit of that. But I think it may involve even more, because one of the things that we see when there are leaders that where the nation may be growing weak, perhaps it may be because of the fact that this person really doesn't have their interest at heart. He's looking out more for himself. And so as some of the terms that some of the folks you used last week in reference to that, he's a rather self-centered individual. And that has a tendency to make those that are under the thumb of his power suffer. And after a while, after a short period of time, let's just say after a year or so, then the people may look at this, well, it's a number of, we'll just give him time and opportunity or whatever, how we think along the same lines. But when it gets into more than 2 years and you're going into 3 years, perhaps even a little bit longer than that, like I say, he reigned for 3 years, which is a general term, okay? Which means he could have reigned some 3.5 years, but it doesn't mention anything like that. But we do know at least he reigned that long. So you get on into the period 2.5 to 3 years, people are recognizing the fact that this is not working good. And what God does is he's setting evidently or allowing this notion to register in these people's minds. So now the person in power becomes the target of the problems that they're having, and they're not happy. So if in fact that's the case, now what I want you to understand, now when you're reading through this, it's easy reading, it's not much difficulty into it, and we have a tendency to just look at it as a narrative, and we don't take time and opportunity. Consider this is part of human history. These are things that were taking place. So now you have to kind of read between the lines is what in fact might have been some things that are going on. What's some of the natural things that citizens will do when they are dissatisfied, say, with leadership, and they're trying to be discreet? Okay. And how do they do this? Okay. Yeah. Oh, even if it's just somebody, y'all come over and have supper with us tonight or something of this nature. And generally the conversation is going to turn around. What do you think about what's going on right now? Oh, now we've turned the dog loose now. So everything just kind of goes at this particular point. And I don't know what we're going to do about this, but we've got to have some kind of, things can't just continue on like they're doing. And you've heard conversations like under that. It happens a lot. Yeah, I figured so. So you're going to get conversations like that. So look at things when you go through readings like this. Look at things from the practical standpoint. These people are human beings. They're being affected by this. And it's a natural thing when they're going through circumstances like that to be just like what we would do. They're going to meet and talk. So a lot of this is going on at this particular point in time. I have a feeling here. And the last portion of verse 23, as you might remember, as we ended up with the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, which is what you're going to see following. So that's part of the narrative of what it is that they're going to be doing here, which is kind of interesting that Samuel mentions it in this way. If he be the writer of it, and I have a feeling he's probably the writer of the book of Judges, that they are going to deal treacherously with him.
Tom,
yeah.
Real quick, the fact that he wasn't a judge,
right? Yeah.
Is it because he's not labeled that in the Bible? Is it the Bible scholars just took liberty to label him a judge?
I think the only reason that comes in context with the list of them is simply he's found in the book as in a position of leadership. Okay. And that, when I memorized the 15 judges, Abdon, Abimelech, Deborah, Ehud, Eli, Elon, Gideon, Ibzan, Jared, Jephthah, Othniel, Samson, Samuel, you go on down the line, Shamgar, Tola. He's been always part of that list because he's mentioned in the book, and that's really the size of it. And that's about it here. So now, verse 24, where we start tonight. Now, do keep in mind that last phrase in verse 23, because it to me is rather odd that even inspiration views the men of Shechem dealing with him treacherously after everything that he's done. So, regardless, nevertheless, and there'll be a point that we're going to make about that a little bit later. Hopefully, I don't know if we get to it tonight, or maybe we will. Verse 24, that the cruelty. Now, do keep in mind too that this is the same sentence. Okay, so it started in verse 23. God sent an evil spirit, and this is part of how that this is going to be accomplished. God is what is responsible behind that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbabel, who's Gideon, might come. So just by looking at that phrase itself, what are your understanding? God's going to get back to Abimelech because of what he did to Gideon's sons. Okay, so they're payback. How would you like that? When people do something bad to you and you have the tendency to want to get vengeance here, or somebody's wanting to get it against you, there may be equal bounds that we may be dealing with here. But when you're dealing with God, you've got a different matter that's involved. So this can't be a comfortable feeling. Of course, he doesn't know about it at all, but this is God that's going to be putting this into work right here. And okay, that cruelty done to them might come. He's dealing with that, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech, their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in killing of the brethren. So now the first portion of what you now saw in verse 23 is coming into a bit of perspective here, because God is allowing the derision occur because of the cruelty that he premeditated against Gideon's sons. And that brings to mind a statement that Paul made in Galatians 6, 7, and 8. You remember it? Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And there's an old proverb we use as well. Chickens have come home to roost. So whatever it was that he has initiated now is about to come back on him, and God is going to be behind it. But now, when you look at the last portion of verse 24 right here, there's one other thing helps bring this in a little bit of perspective for us too, because we do realize now the problems that are coming to Shechem cannot be exclusively laid on Abimelech. Why? They're the ones helping. Oh yeah, what Jotham had stated in the parable, that the devil is going to burn you. And now that they're the ones that are involved in this, they're the ones that have brought up this king, and they also paid him to carry out this treachery against Gideon's other sons. So they're complicit in this. And so whatever problems are going to come to Abimelech are going to be shared by Shechem. And, when you think about a judgment that God has made against the people, how does that generally work? To what extent on some occasions do these judgments go? Many, not always, but in a good number of these occasions, he absolutely eradicates people. I mean, we can, what's some of the examples you might remember clearly? People in the days of Noah? Yeah. Amalek. So you got all these different kinds of judgments. You've got several thousand, hundreds of thousands of these Jews in the wilderness. The judgments came upon them. So, the family of Korah, which was part of the lineage also of Moses. So they paid for it, and some of it was very serious. And so now you kind of keep that in the back of your mind when all of this is going on. Question, comment about verse 24. Going to verse 25. And the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him, that's Abimelech, in the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them. And this eventually is going to be told Abimelech. Now, this is kind of gives you an idea of where the people of Shechem are setting. They're shooting themselves in the foot. They're just making things worse on themselves. They're conspiring. Unless you don't realize what's happening right here, they're conspiring to assassinate Abimelech. And some of the routes, the common routes that Abimelech would normally take to go back and forth where he lived and back into the area of Shechem, they knew him. And so having known his routes of travel, they set men in those places so they could waylay him when he would come through those areas. Now, this gives you an idea that this must have been going on for a period of time, and he hadn't been using these routes for a while. And so all these fellas have been staying up in the mountains waiting for him to come, and he's not coming. So we're wasting our time. So we got other folks that are coming through here. We just might as well jump on them and take care of them. And so this was a common practice that was going on. And so now this treachery that they're undertaking at this point is going to create further problems, because now the word of what was happening with this also gets to the ears of Abimelech. And when he has learned of something like this, he's not going to sit by and let it continue to occur. So now, verse 26. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brethren and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in it. Here you got a man who's, how we refer to these type of people, not necessarily, could be. He's what do you call it? Was a man of opportunity. There's a phrase that I don't think that's exactly the phrase, but it's something of that nature. Yeah, well, yeah, an opportunist. That'd be a good way. It's the same thing, just in short form. So you got an opportunist that is seeing the situation as it's occurring. There have been people now. Again, consider all the people that are involved here. I mean, you're looking at a summary form of everything that's taking place. You got people that live in different portions of the country that go in and through Shechem because commerce is going to be taking place. I'm sure there's going to be trade that's going to be taking place. There are people that will travel through and stay because they need a place to stay and things of that nature. Well, when you're in areas like this, you start hearing things. And as we talked about a moment ago, some of the population are getting together and they're talking. They've been somewhat discreet, but now time may go on where they're not as discreet as normal. And so they may be sitting at an inn and where some of these visitors are coming through and they're sitting around talking, and perhaps some of Gaal's followers right here are overhearing it, or he may even go to them and what is it y'all talking about? You know, and then they're going to fill him in. And so now that's going to get back to this fellow Gaal, whom they're following. So now he sees the opportunity. So they're in a position of weakness. And Abimelech is considered, in his estimation, in this fellow's estimation, to be in a situation of weakness. And he sees a division that's taking place there in Shechem. And he's going to try to exploit the problem. So he comes to Shechem. We don't know anything about this man, by the way. The only thing we know about him is his daddy. His name is Ebed, and we don't know anything about him either. So we're not certain as to what his circumstances are. But he must be a person of some stature, wouldn't you think? As to whatever. And a lot of that has to be pretty much speculation because there's nothing really otherwise stated about it. But he's got to be a man of some stature because he's got a band of followers. And they must be significant enough in number because if he had not had that kind of following, I don't figure the men of Shechem would have paid him any mind, do you? So I think with this group that he has with him, they look like perhaps maybe seasoned soldiers or something. And yeah, well, that's the way a lot of these, but we learned that also with Abimelech. Absolutely. But the text tells us that the men of Shechem now place their confidence in him. What does that tell you about the people of Shechem, by the way? Oh, man, fickle as they can be, looking for. They're also people, it seems, of opportunity or trying to make themselves of some name and some status. And that's one of the reasons why they were so glad to have Abimelech as king, because he's of their number. So that elevates the status of Shechem. And of course, that hasn't worked that well for them. So they're thinking perhaps Gaal may be able to do that. Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, let's just use a parallel situation. Can you think of a parallel circumstance likened to this? Mm-hmm. Several years later. How about David and Absalom? You see, David was in a situation where he was sick a good portion of the time. And it was even considered the fact with his sickness that he would most likely is going to die. So Absalom sees this as a position of opportunity. And after he was dead, you got Abner. So you got a number of set of circumstances likened to that where many of these fellows who were looking to elevate themselves would do most anything to get their following and perhaps attain their power. And this is God is looking at this situation the very same way. So they place their confidence in him, meaning at that point, their dissatisfaction with Abimelech, any viable alternative to them is something that is considered at this time. It makes you wonder if anybody else had come along with some following, they probably would have done the same thing. Okay. Carries us to verse 27, excuse me. And they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards, trode the grapes, made merry, and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink and cursed Abimelech. Now, what you see at this particular point in verse 27 is evidently that which encompasses a little bit of time here. So this is not something that was done in the afternoon. You know, they may have gone out and taken some of the grapes from the vineyards and things of this nature. That's probably a day to get a lot of that done. Then they got to tread out the grapes. That takes a little bit of time. So, and I'm not going to comment on further on that point yet. We will look at some more about that in just a little bit, but I'll give you a little bit of hint. It looks like that it was enough time for between this event and the time that they had their party that it must have been fermented, because it seems to indicate when you start looking at some of the other situations that are occurring here that they may have just a bunch of them got drunk. So that seems to be what is the circumstance that is taking place right here. So now that when God has this sense of confidence now that he can overtake Abimelech, then his men and the people of Shechem, at least some of the leaders, they went to a great effort to celebrate here, or at least now get into the gear to celebrate, and where they're now going to have this party for the change in their prospective leaders. And so they went through the process here of harvesting the grapes and crushing them. And then if you'll notice in the process here, one of the things that they did, which seems to be rather common with groups of people like this, after they had done all this or in the process of their doing it, they went to where? They also their God. So their temple, the temple of Baal or Baal Berith. And this is where they were going to have this party. And the worship is going to evidently also be taking place. Notice they went to the house of God, the house of their God, which probably is going to involve some element of their worship, which you remember on occasion, some of the things that were involved in the worship of Baal was immoral activity. And so it's most likely that the women were going to be brought in and that kind of thing. And so you're going to have a religious orgy. It's basically what this is involving. So at the same time, while they're doing this, is the text tells us that they are going to curse Abimelech. And that word curse is interesting from the Hebrew term galal, which means that they made little or slighted him and his name. Now, if you're in position of being a leader, and especially as a king, it's a little bit different than what we see nowadays in like what we have in a representative republic, where you've got certain elements of democracy that take place. People have a voice, and they can determine who their leader is going to be. When you're a king, as we've illustrated earlier, you basically have a target on you, and you've got to make sure that those that are your subjects are loyal. Otherwise, if they're not, or if you have any sense that they're not, you can be given to paranoia real easy. And that creates a number of different problems. So now they're speaking little of Abimelech. They're slighting him and his name. And if the word, of course, is going to get back to Abimelech, that's going to likely create problems. Well, we're going to learn that some of that is going to happen. So now, verse 28. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, who is Abimelech? And then he does this. Who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is not he the son of Jerubbaal, that is not Abimelech, the son of Gideon as well, and Zebul, his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him? Oh, I find this to be rather interesting, because now Gaal's seeing an opportunity to elevate himself, and so he joins in with now the people of Shechem in their derision of Abimelech. He's been hearing this, so now he just becomes part of it, and for all practical purposes, he becomes the leader of the lot of the talk, I guess you might say. But Gaal, yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have a tendency to pronounce it Gael, but it's not, it's Gaal. Normally with some of the Hebrew terms and Hebrew names, even when you have one like that, you have two syllables where it looks like one, but you actually got two. And especially the way this one is fixed, it's like many others, the emphasis is upon the second syllable, Gaal. And so that's how it works there. So now, here's what I find interesting. He's involved in the derision of Abimelech. So who is he? But then he also asks what? Who is Shechem? I find that to be rather strange. What? He's insulting Abimelech, but now he's insulting Shechem. And why would you think that's strange? Because he's looking to have these people as his followers, and he needs them in order to go up against Abimelech. So why insult them? That gives you an idea again that if this is something is during the time of this celebration, he's probably drunk and doesn't realize what exactly is that he's saying, because that really doesn't make a lot of sense. So this he asked an interesting question here as well. Since Abimelech came into power by eliminating the sons of Gideon, he asked this, is not Abimelech the son of Gideon? Now, the people of Shechem before knew who Abimelech was. He's also son of Gideon, but his mother was from Shechem. And this is really what it is that Gaal is centering on. If he is a son of Gideon, then why is it that he should reign? If you people here at Shechem didn't want the sons of Gideon to reign at all, why is he in this position? Well, again, it all has to come back to the influence of his mother, and that plays a very significant role in everything else concerning Abimelech, as we'll also see. But of course, as we know, he only comes to power because his mother was from here. But even that, Gaal is asking what's so significant about her. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to appoint somebody or elevate somebody as a king that is of the lineage of Gideon, and you did not want the lineage of Gideon to be the king, why is he king? We know that his mother is from here, but why is that so important? It's just a handmaid, just a woman. In that day, women were not considered as something of great importance as far as humans were concerned. But why is that so important? You're placing a great deal of emphasis upon her, not really upon him, because if you were placing emphasis on him, he shouldn't be king anyway. He ought to be dead like the rest of them. So now, that gives them some food for thought right here. And then it carries on from that particular point in the text by mentioning the fact he's also bringing up Zebul, who is an appointee of Abimelech over the area of Shechem, which means he was something on the order, maybe what we'd call a mayor or a governor or something of that nature of that area. And then, of course, he is speaking in derision about him too. And with that further insult of Shechem's significance, when you look at that text, and especially the latter portion of it, you start getting an idea about him. He knows the background of the city, how it basically has come to its name. You know, you serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him? What do we remember about the man Shechem? And we know his father, Hamor. But what do we remember about Shechem? You recall? Turn over to Genesis 34. Genesis chapter 34, you can peruse down through it. One of the things you're going to see is one of the sons of Hamor, which was Shechem, was really struck by Jacob's daughter, whose name was Dinah. And what was it that he did? Okay. Took her and violated her because he was really stricken with her. And he was trying to work things out that he might even be able to take her as wife. But then what happened? Simeon and Levi took a group of folks up there, evidently, and then slaughtered them, those that are in that area. So, and that's something, of course, that just really worried Jacob because he was fearful that Hamor get with others and come down there and overtake them. But nevertheless, that evidently is something that God knows. And so that being the case, that's what he's stating about Shechem, which is where these people are from. Why should you be of any significance considering your namesake? You see the point? So you got somebody whose tongue is evidently really loose at this particular point, and I'm not sure he understands just exactly the significance of what all it is that he's stating. If he does, he's not really obviously any better shape than Abimelech is. All right, need a question, comment on verse 28. You start seeing interesting patterns and things that are going on here. It's just truly interesting narrative that's taking place there. So we go to verse 29. Now, even after having stated what he just did, now he's looking to elevate himself again. He puts himself in the course of the events, and would to God this people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, you know, Abimelech's not there. He's just like crying out to him as in basically the third person right here. Increase thine army and come out. So he's offering this bold challenge to Abimelech. You know, you want to take this place back, you're going to have to deal with me. So come out and fight. Yeah, buddy. So what you're seeing here, Gaal, is what we would refer to as a quintessential politician, because he recognizes the vulnerable state that Abimelech is in right now, because he knows after having been there that he's despised by the people. And then based on that premise, then what's he's suggesting by implication is that if he was accepted as the leader, then he would just simply dispose of Abimelech. And then in this moment of self-flagellation here, he's going to challenge him and to fight with him. Now, there's a couple of observations to see right here in my view. Number one, Abimelech's not there. So Gaal can boast all he wants.
Yeah.
What that does is make him look big in the eyes of his followers. And in doing so, it also perhaps, even in spite of the fact that he's insulted Shechem itself, they still see him as a viable alternative based on the circumstances of which they've had to deal with where Abimelech is concerned. And so Gaal is perceiving that there's no real repercussion. I can mouth off whatever it is that I want at this particular point. But it also, secondly, could be possibly perceived based on what you saw in verse 27, that the process of this celebration has gone on for several days. And so if that's the case, then like I say, it's most likely that they're drunk. And so he may not realize everything that he's stating anyway. Yeah. Take your cup of courage. And that's basically what it is that he's evidently doing at this point. Yeah. Yeah. Cup of courage. So there's your next song right there. Right. There you go.
Once they get drunk, they have no reasoning.
Yeah.
Their tongue gets kind of loose.
Yep. Yes, it is. I've had a whole lot of experience with that. When you arrest a lot of these people that under the influence of you can hear them. They will talk all kinds of things. So, most of them don't even remember what to talk about. Mm-mm. Verse 30. Now remember, when you go back up verse 28, he was insulting Zebul, all right, who is Abimelech's appointee. So when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. So when he hears the boast, he gets infuriated, and because he's been part of the insult here. So that pretty much just speaks about what it is you see in verse 30. We go on to verse 31. So here's what he does. Zebul, being the officer of the city, has influence. He's got people evidently that are under his employ, and knows how to operate discreetly. Just get about and go through the city, go out the city, and things of this nature, which I'm sure most normal activities taking place. And so with that, he just tells messengers, I want you to go to Abimelech, and I want you to tell him everything that's transpiring right here. And also, not just the fact that Gaal is responsible for what's happening, but there are others here in the city that are conspiring with him in this revolt. So he's going to be telling them that. And he knows that, also notes here that Gaal and his followers, what they have done. When you look at verse 31, he sends messengers to Abimelech privily saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brother have come to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. Now, city of Shechem is evidently walled, but there's also inside the city, perhaps where Zebul and other leaders would have lived, an area we might call like a castle, which also contained a tower, which was used for defense purposes, and also it was so well fortified evidently that when there were significant threats, the people would find their way to the tower to help protect them and things of this nature. So nevertheless, this is something that is going to be made known to Abimelech, that they're surrounding the city. They're setting up things for perhaps, if in fact that you ever hear what's going on, to help keep you from coming in and taking the city. All right, we're about to run out of time, so I'm going to go on into verse 32, and then maybe we can get through verse 33 here. Verse 32 says, now therefore, this is the message that he's given Abimelech now. He says, now therefore up by night, thou and the people that's with thee, and lie in wait in the field. So when the message gets to you in the night, make your way around Shechem by night and hide in the fields, which is not only if he were, let me see if I can get to the area of Shechem is in this vicinity here. Now remember again, it's on the slope of Mount Gerizim, which is right here, and Mount Ebal, which is also noted in this text in Judges 9 by a different name, but it's referring to Mount Ebal here. And you've got the valley that's going to be in this vicinity here. So some of the fields that are around, and not only that, but the areas that surround the city, they're going to try to set themselves up. That's just what it is that Zebul is telling him to do. Set yourself up and basically surround the city, and do this to where it's not going to be detected by Gaal and his followers right here. So his reasoning is that the matter right at the present time, this is something that needs to have some swift attention to this. And if you're going to maintain your power, you better get on this. So that's the ideas behind it. And then verse 33, and it shall be, now once you get yourself set up here at night, that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, rise early, set upon the city, and behold, when the people that is with him come out against thee, then mayest thou do to them as thou shalt find occasion. Now, what you're going to find in the next few verses right here is what Zebul is suggesting to Abimelech that he do, and then gives and interjects in this some of his ideas as to what's going to happen when Abimelech does it. You know, it's not the events themselves, but he's kind of pointing out, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I feel like is going to happen. So that's the message that you're finding in those texts. You want to hit one more? Well, I'll tell you what, that's a good spot to stop, because then you've got Abimelech, beginning in verse 34, you're going to have Abimelech's response. So let's just pick up with his response. Would that be good?
Well, actually, I was thinking you for 30 seconds more.
Okay.
Well, really, I won't try to lose.
Oh, you're going to try to do it good, brother.
I'll try.
Okay. 112.
Come, ye sinners.
$112. God has often issued certain expectations of those that would be his people. Some that involve what we might call very serious tasks, but not impossible. God has never expected anything out of us impossible for us to do. He would not do that. God is a just God, is a living God, and does not want us to have to go beyond what our capacity as a human being is going to be. Some of the tasks that he's given us are very simple and very easy for us to carry out. You think about some of the things that were responsible, that he had placed on the responsibility on the people of Israel with the law of Moses. It was rather intrusive in a number of different ways. You think about if that were something that were still in effect nowadays. I think Nana Ruth asked me something the other day about one of the laws of the Sabbath having to do with their travel and things of this nature. Well, you could only go just so far, because to go beyond that's considered work, and they could not do those kinds of things. Well, imagine now on your Saturdays that a lot of you, of course, may mow your grass or things of this nature. Well, you know, you're not going to be able to get out and push the mower that far, or even walk. If you had to walk down to the drugstore or things of this nature, you're not going to be able to go, depending on the distance that was going to be. Even though there might have been things that you might have needed, things of that nature, we're not going to be able to do that. There were a number of things like this. Perhaps if you had to have so much of wood to be able to do your cooking and things of this nature, you can't pick up your sticks. So this stuff you're going to have to do other days of the week to prepare for that. You imagine what our society would be like nowadays if that kind of thing were to be imposed upon us? It would. Well, you'd have people nowadays just go ahead and shoot themselves because they just couldn't do anything. That's just the way that we are so tuned about being able to be free to do what we want. The matter of fulfilling the law, especially when it comes to principles of worship and things of this nature, were a little bit more involved. You had to make sacrifices. There were certain, there were those that were poor, that were limited as far as what they could sacrifice and things of this nature, but nevertheless had to offer them. And all the details that were involved in offering up an animal sacrifice. We just think about on occasion killing an animal, throwing it on the altar. No, it involved a whole lot more than that. But when you think about what it takes to become a child of God, how easy that is. If you just want to do what God says, do you believe that Jesus is the Christ? Have the willingness in heart to change your life. Now, that may be where the real issue is with a lot of people. I don't know if I can really change. I don't know if I can do that or not. Well, it all depends again whether or not you want to go to heaven. If you want to go to heaven and change your life. How easy it is actually, and then it's another thing of difficulty with some people to stand before a group of others and offer with the mouth confession. But if you truly want to go to heaven, it's fairly easy. It just depends on what you want to do. Then to submit yourself. It's not something you do yourself. You submit yourself because you're a dead man in sin. And so somebody's going to bury you in water. You're going to submit yourself to being baptized to have your sins washed away. All practical purposes, that's very simple and it's doable by any individual. And why there are so many that resist that is rather beyond me. It is such a simple thing to do. And if one has the love for God and the willingness to want to go to heaven, those are the things he will do. As children of God, we take it for granted too, don't we? And then our behavior becomes such on occasion as we take that for granted and it shows up. And so we do things or say things or whatever that are going to reproach the name of God. And so we find ourselves estranged from God because of our sin. But it's a simple thing as well if we have the will to do it. As John states, we confess our sin, he's faithful and just to forgive it. He's not requiring us to go to the moon or go around the equator 3 or 4 times. There's not some Herculean task that he's asking us. Just confess our sin and repent. Pray that thought of thine heart be forgiven, and it will. Well, we sing the song to urge obedience for those who might have that need. There may be those in our live stream audience that may have some spiritual needs as well. And if that be the case, make sure that you contact us and let us know how it is that we might be able to help you. And we'll certainly do that very thing. But if you have that need this evening, then make those needs known while we sing our song. 112.
Of and harm. He is able, he is able, he is willing, have no more. He is able, he is able, he is willing, out no more. Come ye weary, heavy laden, bruised and broken, full of sin. If you tarry till you're better, you may never enter in. Now is the righteous, not the righteous, sinner Jesus paid
came to win. Not the righteous, not the righteous, sinner Jesus came to win. Thank you for letting me lead, such as it was.
Glad to have you back in the saddle. Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Glad you're here this evening. Don't forget our service is Sunday at 9, 10, and 11. Brother Matt Urban will be here to speak in my place. I will be in Sevierville at the Polishing the Pulpit. And we're looking forward to being there and going to the different classes and being part of that for the week. We'll be back next Wednesday night. Normally it goes through Thursday, but we've got some other things going on, and I want to be back to teach the class Wednesday night. So we'll do that and then carry on our work from there. So let's be working and encouraging others to come and to be with us at every one of these times. It's good to see the good number we got this evening. Good to see our sister Hilda back out. We mentioned her a little while ago, and she's been suffering for a little while, and it's good to see her and good to see Bob back a little bit. Well, he was here Sunday anyway, but to have a little bit better color about him, you know, without all the purple and everything. Good to see.
Judy is major sinus, etc.
Okay, Sister Judy's down this evening. She was down a little bit yesterday, if I remember too, wasn't she?
Yes.
Okay. And there may be others that we need to know. Do you know of any others that we need to mention? Okay, maybe we've got them all. I don't know of any other. I haven't gotten any word of any other meetings or anything of that nature at the present time. So if those come up.
Are they going to take the lessons at Polishing the Pulpit?
Yes, they do. They can put them online, and they put them on these thumb drives and things of this nature. And I think you can order them through that. But they may also, I think they may be live streaming. I'm not sure, but I think they may do it. It's a rather comprehensive undertaking, even to live stream. So that may be just the reason why they're just taping them. The reason I say that is because about every hour, I don't know how many classes are going on at the same time. And they are in different places. The resort where it is the reason why they had to separate.